emotional tantrum is a really, it's such a fantastic way of actually describing what is happening, because we sometimes refer to it in clinical terms of rumination or obsessive thoughts,
Mm.
and it just won't let go, right? And what could a parent do? What could they say? What have you got any tips that you could say to them? Listen, you're in this state. Potentially, you're going to go through a problem with getting your hands on the treatments that you've been receiving up until now. What could they do or say to their kids to help them to navigate this particular process if they're not willing to leave the state?
Well, it's as I say, it always one of my best answer usually, hey, it feels like the end of the world, but it's not the end of the world. Um, that getting them to receive that is a whole another thing. Um, but supporting someone's kind of social transition if they can't have the surgical transition that they want immediately, actually, and understanding that actually every trans person before them up until very recently went through all of that. That every other trans person has been there, and every older person never even had the opportunity. Um, you know, I lived in a country that didn't deny surgery, but it still took 8 years to
Mm.
get access to it. But if you tell a 15-year-old they got to wait 8 years to 20 or whatever,
Half their
23.
life.
Yeah, exactly. You got to wait till you're old. You got to wait till you're in your 20s. But yeah, we've all been there, and that's what I meant. We've created this immediacy dilemma. So getting them to navigate that, you have to navigate it with regular conversation. You have to, the biggest gap in trans journeys is the care between the stages. The stages of getting maybe puberty blockers, of getting hormones, of them waiting for surgery, of getting your ID changed, of being accepted in school or university, of coming out. All of these little train stations on our gender journey, the bit is the travel between them where there is no care.
Mm.
There is no mental health support. There's no, even if you see a therapist, you can probably only afford to see one once a month or something like that. But actually, what happened to, weekly therapy? What happened to daily care? What happened to daily check-ins from your besties and your family? Um, how are you feeling? And everything you're feeling, including anger and frustration, is all okay. It's all okay because it's real. That's what you're feeling. So it's acknowledging the feelings and creating a space for the expression of it. But I think that applies to anything. It applies to anything and everything. If we don't create a space for people to, express that rather than say, we don't want to over rationalize it or actually tell them to grow up and rubbish like that. Pull yourself together. It's said of people who go through depressions or anything else like that as well. Um, there has to be a freedom and a space to express those things, but also to then bring in that maturity and rationality and reality check of you're not going to get it tomorrow, whatever happens, whether it's next year or the year after, you're still going to have to navigate minimum multiple months and possibly several years.
Mm.
So, how are we going to do that together?
Yeah.
What do you need from me? And what do we need together? What do we need to navigate the delay? Whether the delay is months or years, it's going to feel like eternity to you regardless. I get that. So how do we navigate the gap? Because the gaps are the greatest risks, as I say, with regard to suicidal ideation as well. I was speaking to a mum last night who herself was a former psychiatrist. Her kid had actually started hormones, but took their own life before the next stage because of the weight, because of the pressure, because of numerous other things, because of how she was treated. Um, but the journey itself is not risk-free, even if you've got a guaranteed destination. Because
Mm.
again, we're human beings driven by hormones and we have to navigate things on a daily basis. You might even be progressing everything that you want, but receive so much kind of transphobia, misgendering, or internal other comorbid challenges, whether those are neurodiverse or mental health or otherwise, or beauty standards and stereotypes of how you're meant to look or how you think you're meant to look or not passing. You're going to still struggle with those, even if you get everything you want. You get the hormones tomorrow, you get surgery next week, and then according to your view of the world and the world's view of you, you don't pass, you're still going to have to face the world. And the various stages aren't cures. They can aid and may remove gender dysphoria, but eventually you still got to live in the world. And unless you can learn how to handle the world, which, as I says, is about eventually not taking attacks personally, because you're going to get that anyway, even if you go through your transition, get the best surgeon on the planet. Women get personally attacked for beauty standards. So if you're coming from a trans point of view and you're, transitioning into that space, yeah, you might get to be lucky with with your looks and your beauty and your surgeries, but all you're doing is gaining a female space of sexism and misogyny as well. So personal hatred and standards and attacks and passing and shaming and everything is still going to be there. So unless you can work out how to handle that, you're still not going to survive in that sense. And I don't want to be morbid about it, but we have to tool up as people to navigate this world. We have to find supportive mechanisms to help our daughters and our trans daughters to be able to navigate this world, to be able to navigate, the visual shaming, and the activity shaming that goes on. Because unless we can do that, none of us will survive. So trying to become mature humans who are more resilient, yet no less real, and still being free to be emotional, but also able to not let our emotions literally kill us. Trying to bring balance to that. Yeah, it's hard, but they're the tools of life. So I would recommend therapy to everyone. Forget whether you're trans or not. Just go through therapy, get as much as you can from a decent therapist, get it as regularly as you can, and in between the therapy, get close friends and family to be, free therapists. In other words, people that can hold space with you and allow you to get the stuff that's in there running around your head out. Because, that whole trouble shared is kind of true. And also, once you speak it out or diary it out, certainly if you diary it out in a way that is slightly more public than private in that sense, because if you just diary in a book and then no one ever looks at it and you lock it up with a key, every time you open it, the thoughts come straight back into your head. They haven't gone anywhere. Getting them out on paper doesn't always solve them, but getting them out to someone else, you have someone else who might say to you, "Have you actually heard yourself?" Sometimes the power of them diminishes as you spill them and express them.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
and
Freud called it catharsis. Yeah.
yeah,
So the
exactly.
ability to just keep talking about it and eventually get bored of your own story. So